Tom Nappy here, and we are joined by Hopkinton High School Athletic Director Rich Cormier. Rich, how are you?
Hey, Tom, I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good. Can't complain. Football's coming up, so that's always good, right?
Big news today with Cam Newton.
I know. That was a shocker to me.
Same
I did
here.
not expect that. But I think Mac Jones will be pretty good. And we'll be talking about that later with the guys on HCAM Sports Talk.
I'm sure.
But we got fall season coming up. I just caught up with the girls' soccer team the other day. They're looking good. Some great talent returning to that team. And, of course, we'll have football, boys soccer, field hockey, and girls volleyball. How's everything going so far in these summer practices and a couple scrimmages coming up as well?
Yeah, honestly, season's off to a great start. I think there's definitely a renewed energy this year, just hoping for a little bit more normalcy. I mean, obviously, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, there are still some COVID aspects that we need to navigate as schools and as athletic departments. But the vast majority, particularly our outdoor sports, are not impacted. Their rules aren't impacted. There's no restrictions on numbers and spectators and all of those things. Cross country and field hockey and soccer and football, our outdoor sports are going to be as they normally would be. So I think people are just really excited. And then for volleyball and cheer practices, as well as unified basketball, which starts up later this month, those will be a little bit more challenging. But I still think overall, just knowing that they're going to play again, take a sport like volleyball, they still have to play masks, which we just learned last week. But they're, hopefully going to be playing in front of a much larger crowd. The rules of the game are going to stay the same. Really, the only difference is that they're required to wear a mask at the moment. And we'll see if that changes, by the end of the season or not.
Absolutely. But I'm sure most of them are used to that by now, unfortunately.
Fortunately.
So when did that guidance just came out the other day, correct? And that's for the entire state?
Yeah, so it was kind of a combination of things that came together at the same time. So many school districts like Hopkinton were trying to figure out what they were going to do for their schools, because at the time it was a local decision. There's recommendation from different governing bodies, but there was no mandate to do anything in particular. And then actually it was, I think, just after Hopkinton had made their decision about masks that DESE then put a statewide mandate in for all K-12 students, staff, et cetera, indoors until at least October 1st. And then the very next day, the MIAA followed up on that DESE mandate, saying that that would apply to sports as well. So anyone that is playing sports, officials, coaches, staff, spectators, anyone indoors will be required to wear a mask.
And we're hoping that won't last all year, but who knows what's going to happen as long as they get the games in, I guess, at this point.
Yeah, it certainly would be more impactful in the winter when everybody's indoors. But, as we've learned throughout this process, things are constantly changing. It's very fluid. If anything, we've gotten very good at changing on the fly and adjusting, and the student athletes, the coaches and their families have all been amazing, and just we've had so many changes over the past 18 months. And, sometimes I feel horrible because I'm not really giving people much notice. Our volleyball team and cheer teams started their tryouts and opening practices not wearing masks. And then about 3 or 4 days in, I don't remember how many days, when that change came in, they had to wear masks. So these things are just changing constantly, and the kids just roll with it, and they're doing a great job.
Absolutely. They've had to adjust to a lot over these last couple of years. So I'm curious as to, knock on wood, hopefully this doesn't happen, but if there's any situation where games need to be moved or canceled, I know there's a certain amount of games that each team has to get in. Is there any kind of leniency towards that? Shall something happen where maybe a week of games can't get played?
Yeah, certainly. Hopefully we don't come into that situation. I think for us too, we have such a large number of our student athletes that are vaccinated. And so the rules regarding quarantines are a little bit different than they were last year. So hopefully we don't run into that, but it may not have anything to do with us. We could lose opponents, and games could get canceled due to that reason. So we do have our schedules. They're full schedules. We're moving forward in terms of as we normally would with our league schedule, our non-league schedule, tournaments, et cetera. The state tournament will be as it normally is. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. It's actually a new statewide tournament going into effect this year. But, what I mean is that the state tournament's moving forward. So I think what would happen is, and this is true of weather, if we run into a situation where we have to cancel a game because of weather, and this does happen, then we reschedule it, and then we have to cancel it again because of weather, and then we run out of dates. You can apply to the MIAA to consider that game a no contest so that you don't take out, so neither team wins, neither team loses, and it doesn't have a negative impact on anybody. So I would imagine if we run into a situation due to COVID that they would be obviously very flexible. And, maybe we were supposed to play 18 games, but we only played 16. That's fine.
And I haven't heard anything about Triple E yet, so that's good.
Don't jinx anything.
Just jinx it.
Don't jinx anything.
So how did the scheduling go? It looks like you have everything squared away. Was it a relatively easy process for you to get those schedules together?
Yeah, honestly, the scheduling was pretty easy. The hardest part is usually our freshman teams and our middle school teams and finding opponents for those schools. But at the varsity level and even at the JV level, pretty much everyone in our league has JV and varsity. So that's most of your schedule. And then you pick up a couple non-league teams, and many of whom we've played for years. We've been playing Wayland in football, Barnstable in volleyball, Bishop Feen and boys soccer. We've kind of had similar type matchups, prior to COVID, and now we've kind of brought those matchups back. Cross country will go back to participating in a lot of the MSTCA meets. We're still not quite sure what cheer competitions are going to look like because of the mask mandate, and competitions are indoors. So we're still kind of waiting on guidance on that. Golf, same thing. We were able to pick up some non-league matches against some, quality opponents to hopefully challenge our team. But again, the scheduling really kind of came together pretty well. And then it's just a matter of figuring out where to put everyone, since so many of our teams use the same fields. But no, we're excited to get going. Our first contest is tomorrow. Golf opens our fall season tomorrow with their first match. Golf usually gets going kind of quicker than everyone because they also end earlier because of daylight issues,
right,
at golf courses. So their season ends a little bit earlier than some of our other fall teams. Hopefully the weather will pan out, since we're getting the remnants of Ida rolling through tomorrow and Thursday, which could cause some issues.
Yeah.
But again, hopefully we can get the golf match in. If not, obviously we'll reschedule it. But we're excited to have our first event tomorrow, first day of school, first athletic event. Should be a lot of fun.
And have you talked to any of the athletes? They must be excited to hopefully have a normal season this year.
Oh, absolutely. We had a meeting with the captains last week, and I've just gotten to see a lot of the students, competing and chatting with them. And again, everyone was excited last year because we had lost sports, right? We had lost sports all spring. And so there was a certain level of excitement last fall, but it was also, very challenging, right? Everyone was wearing masks, even outdoors. Spectators were very limited. You couldn't go to away games. The rules of the sport changed significantly. There was no league championships. It was great. Honestly, it was something, right? And people were excited. But I think now the fact that we're kind of fully back, there's definitely a renewed sense of optimism. There's a lot of excitement, especially for the seniors. I mean, if you think of the seniors, they've had one, and this is true of all grades, but the seniors have had one quote unquote normal year of high school.
Right.
And that was their freshman year. So, I think for them to be able to hopefully have a chance to really have that final season, which is something that the last two senior classes haven't necessarily been able to say, depending on what sport they played. So I think there's a lot of optimism that we're going to have 3 full seasons, and not just for the seniors, for everyone, but I think for the seniors, obviously, it's their last chance. And I think that's how people have felt the last couple of years, right? You particularly feel bad for the seniors who are kind of losing out on that final opportunity.
Absolutely. And hopefully they'll get that one normal year in. I noticed there was a few 6 o'clock football games this year rather than the typical 7 o'clock times. What's the reason for that?
So it actually it's kind of now changed again. But so when we scheduled Tewksbury, as we all know, they live pretty far away. So they kind of requested if we could play 6 o'clock so they're not getting home super, super late. And then we were also playing at Nauset in week 2, which obviously is a really long ride. So that's also a 6 o'clock start. So then we just felt like maybe it made some sense to kind of have a few games in a row that were the same time so they could kind of get into a groove before we make the switch back to 7 o'clock. So there's really no major reason for it. It was just trying to, be a good host to a team that was traveling quite far away to come to us. And then rather than going 7-6, 7-6, 7-6, we did, 3 in a row at 6 o'clock. And then we switched to the 7 o'clock, starting with Foxborough, and then moving into our league season, we go to 7 o'clock. Now, our schedule has since changed, and Nauset had to move our game back to a 7 o'clock start. So now it actually does look a little more disjointed, but that was not the plan that we had in place when we put the schedule together.
Yeah, it is what it is, right? as long as they get them in.
Right.
And also, as far as volleyball, I think I noticed some time differences there as well. I believe it was either freshman or JV starting a little earlier than
So the
normal.
reason we do that is the JV1 and JV2 teams technically play kind of at the same time, but the reason we do it is it's for officials. So the 2 JV matches each have one official, and then those officials come together for the varsity. And because we play our JV2 matches over at Brown, we start it 15 minutes early so that the official has a little extra time to get over to the athletic center, so that hopefully we're not delaying the start of the varsity game waiting for that official to come over. So that's the only reason for that. So we just start JV2 like 15 minutes early so that hopefully both officials are kind of there at the same time to get ready for the varsity match.
Okay, well, that makes sense. Well, I know Coach Skiba was excited that there'll be throw-ins this year, and we'll have some normal soccer, and hopefully it'll be a good fall season.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all excited. I think our teams are primed to do quite well. Last fall was very weird, obviously, but our team still did well, within the pod system and within the rules that we had to play. And we have a lot of kids back from those teams. So I think there's a lot of optimism, but at the same time, we're not really sure who we're playing against, right? Like most years you kind of know, and you kind of have a sense of how teams might be from one year to another year. Like, the coaches obviously keep track of which players are returning on different teams. This year is going to be a little odd in that respect. It's going to be kind of a fresh start for a lot of these teams. So our field hockey team was actually a very senior laden team the last couple years. So we've had a lot of turnover with our field hockey team. So it's very much a fresh start for them as well, coming off last year's 7v7 style, now going back to the typical 11v11. And things like that. So, we're back at the state park for cross country, whereas last year we weren't able to use the state park. So those teams are excited to be able to do that. And they weren't able to do those other races, those larger races, the divisional races, the MSTCA races, they go down to Barnstable every year and do a race under the lights at night, which is really cool. So we're able to kind of do all of those things again. So I think that's part of where the excitement comes from, is that there just is going to be a little bit more normalcy, even if they have to wear a mask when they're in the locker room and on the bus and in the weight room. There's still more normalcy than there was, and we got a taste of this last spring when we could start playing outdoor sports without masks, and we got some really cool experiences. We wrestled outdoors. And obviously we got to host the state championship in baseball.
That'll come back, the outdoor wrestling. Well, actually, that's in the winter now.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think so, simply because if it's played in the winter like it normally is, I don't know that anybody wants to wrestle outside in January. So
that sport, I have to imagine, is quite difficult with a mask on, because that is a very strenuous sport. But hopefully by then we won't be wearing them, but we'll see what happens. Right. In any case, we're hoping for a good fall season. And I think one of the other interesting things is you had some athletes last year play those fall sports that typically play football, or one of the other wrestling that got pushed off. So they'll a lot of those athletes will be back to their normal sports, but we're hoping for a good season. And thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us. And I'm sure we'll catch up with you again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tom. Look forward to seeing you guys out at the fields. And thanks again for all your support of our student athletes. We really appreciate it.
And of course, we'll have coverage on HCAM, and we'll have our broadcast schedule up on a weekly basis, so you'll be able to see where we're at. We're planning on covering all the home games we can. Obviously, weather could be an issue in some instances, but we're going to cover pretty much all the home games. So we're looking forward to that. Thanks so much, Rich.
All right. Thanks, Tom. Talk to you soon.